I only knew two people in the whole continent. One was my boss, Roland. He'd hired me over a phone call 10 days previously when he was in Tbilisi in Georgia and I was in Moscow. And the slightly more important person at the moment was a Ugandan driver called Gordon, who was in the Land Cruiser in front of me. And if I lost him, I was really literally lost in the heart of darkness. Moving to a country in Central Africa which had just finished a genocide, killing 800,000 people 10 days before, was definitely not on my bucket list when I was growing up. But here I found myself on the border between Uganda and Rwanda, 48 hours after my first ever visit to Africa. Crossing the border, going to a new job, a new life, a new place to live. Except I didn't know anything about the job I was doing. I had no idea what was going to be paid, how long the contract was. I didn't know where I'd be living. In fact, I didn't know very much at all. And having been a student in Manchester during the year, I hadn't really learned that much about Rwanda either. And I was conscious as I crossed the border that really I only knew, apart from my passenger in the car, I only knew two people in the whole continent. One was my boss, Roland, who was a British guy, who was my boss in Russia a couple of years before. And he'd hired me over a phone call 10 days previously when he was in Tbilisi in Georgia and I was in Moscow. And the slightly more important person at the moment was a Ugandan driver called Gordon, who was in the Land Cruiser in front of me. And if I lost him, I was really literally lost in the heart of darkness in the middle of Central Africa. The first sign of chaos really became known at the border because Uganda was a British colony and so they drive on the left, and Rwanda was a Belgian colony and so they drive on the right. And as we drove through no man's land, it was very clear that nobody had any idea which was the right way to go, and so it was absolute chaos crossing there. But I'll never forget finally getting through the border on the Rwandese side, and literally 10-15 metres afterwards we came to the first roadblock, which was two oil drums filled with sand and a bit of rope stopping cars, and the very well dressed in neatly pressed fatigues, military fatigues with a maroon beret, was this soldier, and he was checking my documents, and he looked at me with a really mocking smile. Had amazing big white shiny teeth. He was smiling, looking mocking with his Kalashnikov, and the power of life and death over me. And he was perhaps 12 years old. And from there we went through about 10 or 12 more checkpoints till we got to the capital, Kigali, where we got to the office, and I briefly saw my boss Roland, and this was literally the only sort of connection I had to my future, my job, where I was living. And he was in the car park, he looked at me, he smiled, he grabbed my hand, big handshake, said, "Great to see you, Paul, got to run, I'll see you at dinner. I have a nice little cheeky agricultural project for you, you'll be fine." And so that was all I knew. And so then I was introduced to some people at the office, and nobody knew who I was. There was no electricity, there was no water, there was literally nothing apart from really stunned silence, so that people were still very, very traumatized about what had been happening. We drove, I followed Gordon into the house where I was going to be staying at, and this was a very nice 4-bedroom villa up in the hills in Kigali. Kigali is a very beautiful city set in the hills, and all the roads are sort of like mountain roads, and you go around, and it's quite hard to navigate. And I will remember there was this dead cat with its legs up in the air with the rigor mortis at the junction where I turned left of my house, and that was the biggest landmark. I had to find the place I was living for the next couple of weeks until somebody moved it, and then I got lost. And initially when we got down to the house, it looked picture perfect really. It was a 4-bedroom villa overlooking the valley, garden, lovely terraces, and everything looked perfect until you had a little whiff of what was in the air. There was a body buried very shallowly in the garden, which on certain days smelled terribly. The chef, the live-in chef, a guy called Jean, was an old guy with crazy wild eyes. He had actually hidden the attic during the genocide and witnessed everything. We were next door to the Prime Minister's office, and the Prime Minister actually jumped over into the house that I came to stay in. Like I said, there was no water, there was no food, there was literally nothing apart from the only thing we could get, and it was quite bizarre, were cases and cases of really cold, chilled Primus beer from Congo. But in terms of food, we were eating the first few days just high energy biscuits, and that was it. And we had 6 jerry cans of water came in the morning, and so you got up there and you did your washing and ablutions there. We had a 4-bedroom place. My boss, Roland, gave me a bedroom. Every night we had up to 15 different people staying in this place. Most of them were aid workers who'd been hired like me, who had no idea where they were going, what the job was, or the salary or anything. And invariably they'd spend the night and then they'd be sent out to the camps in Goma in Tanzania, where there were several million refugees who escaped with the fighting. And you'd have shell shock like people coming in from New York who'd been hired from the New York office. They'd come to Kigali airport, not been met at the airport, and then finally gone to the office and nobody knew who they were, so they sent them to the house, and they came to the house and we'd never heard of them either. And Roland then got their name and details and sent them off to the camps the next day. It was absolute chaos, really. And as for the job, I'd come from working as an aid worker in Russia, where things were extremely different, and I was given this portfolio to do a food, agricultural tools and seeds distribution project to returning internally displaced and refugees coming back from the camps abroad. And my job was to find out, first of all, how many people had come back, and then to work with the local authorities and to provide lists of people that come back, to ascertain that these lists were actually accurate, and then to negotiate with the World Food Programme from the UN to get food, and also to find local merchants who were selling things like seeds and agricultural tools and so on, and then to put together a logistics program where I got warehousing and I sourced the trucks and then organised these distribution spots and give out the aid accountably. And it all sounded very, very nice on paper. For my resources, I was given a car. I was given Gordon, my driver, who spoke English and Swahili but didn't speak French in Kinyarwanda, so he was absolutely useless in local communication. And I was given an agronomist who did speak some Kinyarwanda. And to me, it was very simple. I thought, let's go out to the local authorities and meet with the mayor and go through and see what information they had, put lists together, and take it from there. And that was all fine, except the first day I went out, we went to the biggest town just outside, and we went to the local authority building. And when I got there, it was just lying in rubble. There was just nothing left there. There were no people. Everyone had fled or was hiding, and the whole infrastructure had been destroyed. And this was in the east of Rwanda, and this was maybe about 10 days after the genocide finished. And we got back that night, and there was a story in the New York Times that all the roads east of Kigali had been mined, and so we were apparently driving along these very, very dangerous roads. And that's how we started, and next time I'll tell you how we put together a distribution program to feed 600,000 people in eastern Rwanda in just over a few weeks. It was quite an awe-inspiring project, one of which I'm immensely proud. Thank you for watching. This is the latest in the chapters of my latest book, Around the World in 80 Disasters. If you'd like to follow it on video, you can follow the YouTube channel. I'll put a link below. If you'd like to buy the book on Amazon, it's on Kindle and paperback. I'll also put a link below. Thanks for watching.